You're just so irritating and likable.
I think Foster makes you believe anything she plays in a film.
What's going on? People.
There's been very few roles of hers where she's been inauthentic.
You have to applaud her commitment, her willingness to go to an edge that very, very few actors would ever go to.
Too fragile. My past is too questionable. I'm a drunk.
I know that Jodie remains very, very high on everybody's list.
Are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself?
She's actually a very disciplined person, and that applies to her work and the way she runs her life.
This little and sometimes ordinary-looking woman is capable of enormous feats of intellectual and physical bravery.
Gotta search the holds now!
It's nice to be able to see a pattern where you have evolved alongside the roles that you've taken and the stories you've told, that you stand for something.
In September of 2007, The Brave One, starring Jodie Foster, became the #1 movie in the US during its opening week. The film about a vigilante seeking revenge for the murder of her fiancé clearly resonated with audiences. The role of Erica Bain allowed Foster to play a sort of female anti-hero, rarely seen on the big screen.
Most women, when they suffer abuse, when bad things happen to them, turn it inwards. They hurt people they love. And in this case, what if there was a woman who said, you know, I'm not going to be that victim. This time, I'm not going to hurt me, I'm going to hurt you.
It was clear the material struck a chord with Foster. The two-time Oscar winner had become very selective in choosing her roles, as signing on for a film now meant being away from her two boys, Charlie and Kit.
And it has to be worth it because, you know, it means you leave them for, not just physically, because actually you might see them at night, or you see them on the weekends, or you're able to do certain things with them, but you know, you kind of leave them because you're focusing on something else. And it better be good, is all I have to say.
Despite being one of the most highly regarded actresses of her time, Foster has chosen family life over being on the endless Hollywood treadmill.
I think it's good to leave it and then come back, and leave it and come back, and I've been working for a long time, so I think if I did nothing but work, I think I'd be crazy.
Her choice to only work on material that truly inspires her is rare among A-list celebrities, but Foster has never been your typical actress.
She's always gone out of her way to be absolutely herself. Women and men, for that matter, all of us are being told constantly to package ourselves like everybody else and be like everybody else. And Jodie Foster's never done that, not for 1 minute.
That approach has served her well through her remarkable 40-plus year career. Foster has always been her own woman, and unlike many other celebrities, the intensely private Jodie has always kept her personal life personal.
She's stunningly good at protecting her privacy. That's been an enormous godsend. In a sense, Jodie's greatest role, I think, is her role as Jodie Foster actress. But I think that's part of the secret of her survival.
I consider her already truly inspirational to other young women who are planning to become actors and/or directors. You can be in front of the camera, choosing only how much you want to reveal of your private life, while you reveal everything humanly possible about your characters.
Ironically, although she's never revealed too much about her private life, Jodie's debut left her completely exposed. At the age of 3, she made her first professional appearance half-dressed in a Coppertone commercial.
Coppertone. Don't be a pale-face.
This auspicious debut led to more commercials and a string of guest roles on the popular TV series of the time, Gunsmoke, Mayberry R.F.D, and The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
My pop stopped being engaged from that dumb Sherry. I might come home. And I still don't see why I can't go alone. It's because you're a girl. Guys can run away, but girls can't. Where'd you ever hear a stupid rule like that?
Jodie sometimes shared the screen with her older brother, Buddy, another successful child actor. Both incomes helped support the family. Jodie's mother and manager, Brandy, had divorced her husband while pregnant with Jodie. She was raising her family, which also included 2 other daughters, as a single mother. By the time Jodie made her first feature film, Napoleon and Samantha, at the age of 8, she was already a seasoned pro.
Jodie was television's little waif. I was television's little waif boy. So the waif girl and the waif boy meet together in Napoleon and Samantha. We were both professionals at that time, recognized as being real professional kids.
Unlike other children her age, Jodie not only had a job, but she was also spending her downtime on the set studying French. She had to be fluent by the end of summer when she would start school at the demanding Lycée Français. In fact, Jodie's childhood was filled with European influences, from food to art, thanks to her mother.
As a child, when her mother was around, she was extremely professional. Jodie had a very strong respect for her mother and what she had to say.
2 years after Napoleon and Samantha, Jodie was reunited with her co-star in a musical version of Tom Sawyer. In this movie, Jodie had her first romantic film scene, in a very Disney kind of way.
I, John Orson Whitaker Jr., am the proud giver of Jodie Foster's first on-screen kiss. And it's a great kiss.
So nice being engaged.
Just a few years later, that innocent on-screen kiss would seem like a distant memory. Jodie Foster had been working in television and film since she was 3, but the role that really made people sit up and take notice came in 1976. She played a 12-year-old prostitute with whom Robert De Niro became obsessed in the now classic film Taxi Driver.
I think Scorsese's decision to cast a 12, 13-year-old girl in that role was perhaps shocking for the time.
To get a young actress who could command that performance and approach it as a pro and handle all the elements in it as much as possible was something that was really exciting, we thought. And she's just really a good actor.
Neither Jodie or her mother, Brandy, who managed her daughter's career, had any problem with Jodie taking the role. But the state insisted that she be psychologically tested before accepting the part. After 4 hours of answering questions, Jodie was judged stable enough to play Iris. For Jodie, Taxi Driver was just another movie. She would do what she always did, memorize her lines and show up on time. Then she met her co-star, Robert De Niro. His idea of the process was a little more involved.
Robert De Niro really took it on himself to work with me as an actor. As a child actor, of course, I knew the lines before I got to the location, so that all seemed kind of strange to me that he'd be running lines with me. And then maybe the 3rd or 4th time he started introducing little bits of improvisation to be able to dip into a little bit of improvisation and then get yourself back to the script again.
The key element that I saw in Jodie when I first met her was confidence, intelligence, which was equaled by this really very strong talent to become someone else, to perform, to not be aware of a camera, to have a fearless quality about the work that she would do.
What was interesting about it was a shocking role played with such sweetness and freshness that it actually carried the role over so it didn't seem degraded somehow, which made it bearable for audiences, but also made everyone think, who's the girl who's playing that horrible part yet seems so alive?
Foster's portrayal of the young prostitute Iris won her praise from critics and earned her an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. At only 12, Foster had given a performance equal to any adult actor. Foster's follow-up to Taxi Driver was the offbeat gangster send-up, Bugsy Malone.
Yeah, it was kind of an odd idea, this idea of doing a gangster musical all with children.
It's a little weird to look back and see these little people acting like adults. It's not weird, though, when you look at Jodie Foster, because you kind of buy her as an adult, even though she was a kid.
I love that movie. I think it's such a classic. It's such a great film.
Jodie may have loved Bugsy Malone, but the movie that an entire generation of young girls fell for was Freaky Friday.
When I was a kid and I saw Freaky Friday, I thought, this is the best movie I've ever seen. I mean, we all wanted to trade places with our mothers, sort of, and sort of not. It was our worst case scenario. It was as goofy, I think, as Jodie Foster has ever been in front of the camera, and it really worked, and it made her even more of a star.
On the set of her films, the young star indulged her intellectual curiosity, studying the technical side of filmmaking as well.
I remember one day we did a quite complicated camera setup, and I was just talking to the camera operator about where our eye line might be. And before we actually worked out where it should be, she went and she pointed exactly to where it was. Now, is that because she's a complete natural, or is it that she was so sharp that she was able to do it?
In 1976 alone, Jodie starred in an offbeat musical comedy, a Disney classic, and a cinematic masterpiece that earned her an Oscar nomination, and she was only 14 years old. The possibilities for the future seemed endless, yet she was about to walk away from it all. With a proven track record and an Oscar nomination under her belt, Jodie Foster seemed poised for a brilliant career. While most child stars have a difficult time making the transition to becoming adult actors, it was clear Jodie was different.
I think key here is Jodie. I mean, she was really known as a child actor, right? I mean, at that time. Basically because I think from that first quality I saw of her when she was about 9 or 10 when I met her in the room, which was a professionalism. She knew how to handle herself in dealing with a role and dealing with her job, really, as a pro.
I don't think she ever played cute. She always seemed wise beyond her years. She just always seemed to really know more than you did in her roles.
I don't know, I think I'll always be a tomboy, but at the same time, I suppose trying different roles, people will see me in a different light.
Jodie's maturity was also reflected in the way she approached her studies. Despite a busy work schedule, Jodie managed to graduate as valedictorian of her high school class. She now made a choice that seemed like career suicide for any young actor. She decided to go to college.
There was no question in my mind that I always wanted to go to college. Certainly no question in my mother's mind. I mean, first and foremost, I'm somebody who lives very intellectually in the world.
In September of 1980, the California girl could be found on the campus of Yale University, trying to fit into the East Coast Ivy League world.
It was a huge risk to leave Hollywood and go to Yale. I'm sure her agent said, don't do it. One gets the impression that Jodie Foster knows what she wants and she's not going to be told what to do.
Nobody was going to keep me from that. Even my mom thought at the time, wow, her career is really going to be over now. They're 4 years away from the work and nobody will remember her.
There were no limousines or personal chefs for Jodie at Yale. She wanted to be just another student.
She did not like people fawning over her. She did not like anyone treating her differently from any other student. I think she just wanted to be taken as a good student in her own right without reference to her fame.
As a student, Jodie impressed her professors with her creativity as well as her intellect.
In general, she was very smart and articulate in discussions, but she was a wonderful writer as well. So when I think back to the Yale days, I remember this exceedingly deglamorized young woman who turned out to be one of my smartest students.
I have established myself at Yale. I don't need to prove to them that I'm normal because I think people know that I'm normal. And I think that the greatest thing about Yale is that the people are intelligent enough and are respectful enough to me to know that I'm one of the boys and that whatever happens is another person.
Jodie Foster manifested a really diligent work ethic at Yale, at least in my own classes. This is not somebody who skipped class. This is not someone who handed in her papers late. She was sharp, she was focused, her work had a clean edge to it.
Foster loved academic life, studying and writing papers far from Hollywood. In 1985, she graduated magna cum laude with a degree in literature. Now she faced the same looming question that most graduates do: what to do with the rest of her life.
When I got out of college, I really didn't think I would end up being an actor, but I wanted to give it one last try because I didn't really know anything else.
I don't think she came back to be a movie star. I think she came back for the love of acting.
One thing I was sure of was that I wanted to be on movie sets. That's the draw that always brought me back.
Unfortunately for Jodie, she was realizing choice roles were difficult to come by.
I spent a lot of time going on in auditions and not getting parts or being offered parts that I didn't want to play.
Foster made a series of smaller films, Stealing Home, Five Corners, Siesta, that didn't make much of a ripple at the box office. Then along came a script for a movie called The Accused.
In The Accused, Jodie Foster plays Sarah Tobias, who's this sort of down-on-her-luck, lower-middle-class woman who is gang-raped, and she has to sort of not only defend herself, but defend her lifestyle in a way that a lot of people found shocking. She's trying to convince people of what she really believes, and that's a real theme in a lot of Jodie Foster movies.
The Accused was such a powerhouse performance on her part. You know, films like that don't even get made these days. It would be way too tough subject matter.
Foster desperately wanted to play Sarah Tobias, even though she wasn't sure she really liked the character.
The truth about me is I want to be liked. I really do. I want to be liked. It's very uncomfortable playing a character that is sometimes unlikable. She's somebody who talks too loud, and she says really stupid things, and she speaks before she thinks. The bravado is just not perfected. You know, you could really poke holes in it.
Excuse me, I wouldn't make a good witness, right? I'm too fragile. My past is too questionable. I'm a drunk. I'm a pothead, a drug addict. I'm some slut that got bounced around a little bit in the bar, right? So I didn't get raped, huh? I never got raped.
Not quite the Jodie Foster I recall from Yale or elsewhere. You discover that this protagonist is rude, crude, hard-drinking, cheap, lower class, and yet she creates sympathy for these women who are obviously not from her own realm.
Sarah was one of the few complex female characters to come Foster's way in a long time. But Jodie, no longer on Hollywood's A-list, would have to convince the producers to take a chance on her.
You know, it's no surprise that I had to fight for that movie. I'd been out of the picture for a long time. The last time they'd seen me, I was kind of a chubby teenager. So I showed up in New York and met the producer and said, see, this is who I am now, and these are reasons why I wanted to make this movie, and then he still didn't want to see me. So then I had to bang on the door a little bit harder.
Finally, the producers agreed to let Jodie have the role. She then went to work with her co-star, Kelly McGillis, who played the prosecutor taking on Sarah's rape case.
She really looks at something and approaches things from a very analytical point of view. It's not random. It's not necessarily fly by the seat of your pants. She looks at something, she knows where she wants to go with what.
On the set, the director adopted the affectionate nickname of Bossy Little Thing for Foster, who always felt free to give her opinion on how scenes should be directed.
Here's a person who's been doing it all her life, so she was very vocal about what she thought should be done when.
The scene of the gang rape in The Accused doesn't come until the last third of the movie. For many, it is almost impossible to watch. Filming it was just as difficult.
There were two parts to the rape sequence. You know, there's this joyous part where she's a little tipsy, maybe a lot tipsy. She thinks she looks great. She feels confident. She walks in. She makes a couple jokes that make her seem smarter. And her favorite song starts playing.
Oh, I love this song.
We've all had those moments where you just feel like you're the most beautiful person in the room and that you can do no wrong and you can take the world on. And a moment of overconfidence. And you get to see and experience that moment with her where she's beautiful. She's somebody you'd hope you'd want to be. And within a split second, you realize that women aren't allowed to be that because it's dangerous and that they're taught to hesitate. And when we get older, we learn that we can't show that, you know, that you have to hesitate, you have to edit yourself, and that you can't be that confident.
The rape scene took 5 shattering days to film.
I remember somebody saying action, and I remember cut, but I don't remember anything in between.
Hardest thing she ever did. I mean, without a doubt. And at the end of the day, they all broke down. The guys, they all broke down.
I was worried about them, you know. I was really worried that they were falling apart and that they couldn't handle it, and I kind of weirdly channeled my anxiety into caring for these boys, being motherly.
Jodie knew a lot was riding on her performance, and the industry would be watching her closely. She had been given a chance to prove herself as an adult actress, and she wondered if she had blown the opportunity.
I thought my performance was too big, I thought it was too brash and too kind of vulgar and not refined enough. But that's who Sarah was, I was sure that when that movie came out, I thought I was so bad in it. I just thought that, I really thought that was the end of me in the movie business, and I thought I could just go to grad school and maybe, hopefully, people would forget about me.
But she was wrong. When The Accused came out, Jodie Foster went from chubby teenager to Hollywood's most wanted, and she earned a Best Actress Oscar for her performance.
It was when The Accused hit the screens that everyone sat up and took notice and thought, this is an actress. This is one of the best performances we've ever seen on film.
Jodie's Oscar win for The Accused marked the completion of her transformation from teen star to elite adult actress. Little could she have known that she was about to play the most famous character of her career. Jodie Foster established herself as one of Hollywood's top actresses with The Accused. For an encore, she landed what many consider the role she will be most remembered for, in a film that would become a pop culture phenomenon.
I think Silence of the Lambs is career-defining. I think you think of her name, you think of that film. The film is just iconic. Even though she won her first Oscar for The Accused, this is the film that she'll be remembered for.
Today, it's hard to imagine anyone but Jodie Foster playing FBI agent Clarice Starling in the movie The Silence of the Lambs. But the role almost went to someone else.
Had Michelle Pfeiffer taken Silence of the Lambs, what would have happened?
I had already, in reading the piece, decided that I was hoping to continue my relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer, who I just had a great time with on Married to the Mob, and thought Michelle would be extraordinary in the part of Clarice.
I really wanted this movie. I went to New York and banged on his door and made an appointment and said, I'd like to tell you why I'd like to be your second choice.
She said that, if you look at American movies nowadays, the hero or heroine is really defined by the amount of corpses that they are responsible for accumulating in pursuit of justice or doing the right thing. And here's a story about one young woman, Clarice, who is determined to save the life of one other young woman, and it's not about how many people she kills or triumphs over in doing, it's just that she needs to succeed in saving this life.
Throughout her career, Jodie had few opportunities to play the hero. She was hoping this would be her chance.
I had played a lot of victims in my life and had been drawn to that role of victim for any number of reasons, and some of them psychological, and I felt like it was time and it was an opportunity for me to play the one who saves the victim.
Even as Michelle started getting progressively more concerned about the darkness of the piece as she perceived it, Jodie's approach on the character kind of resonated with me, and we met again, and that was it. We headed off to make the movie.
In the film, Foster's character is trying to catch a brutal, elusive killer named Buffalo Bill. Helping her is the lethally brilliant Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, a jailed maniac who likes his meat rare and human. British actor Anthony Hopkins signed on to play the cannibalistic Lecter.
I was a little nervous when I met her in New York. Apparently we were both nervous of each other.
On screen, the relationship between Foster's novice FBI agent and Hopkins' demonic Lecter is mesmerizing.
That at one point, Lecter's character says to me, he starts talking about my accent, and Anthony Hopkins decided to do a version of my accent. And it really upset me.
You see a lot, Doctor? Or are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? What about it? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're afraid to.
She does something with her face which is so extraordinary. And you see several emotions playing at the same time. She's trying to be brave, she's trying to be clever and sharp to match Lecter's brilliance, and at the same time you can see she just wants to crumble and break into tears. And it's a wonderful performance, just that moment.
Every second that you're watching Clarice Starling, you're watching somebody saying, how am I supposed to present myself?
Jodie Foster's intelligence shines through. But then there's a lot of insecurity in Clarice Starling too, which obviously is what Hannibal Lecter preys on.
Foster's ability to convey Clarice's compassion for Buffalo Bill's victims helped give the film a human dimension missing from a typical serial killer movie.
It wasn't about looking at a mutilated corpse. It was about looking at a person who had been alive until someone out there took her life. And it breaks Clarice's heart. That wasn't in the script. That was something that Jodie Foster brought to that moment of time when we were filming it, and it made me very, very, very emotional watching it.
2 of her fingernails are broken off, and there's dirt or grit. I don't know. It looks like she's tried to claw her way through something.
Perhaps the role fits so well because Jodie and Clarice shared many characteristics.
Clarice Starling was the perfect character for Jodie Foster at the perfect age. I mean, it's very, very difficult to think of a better fit between actress and director and between actress and role. It was everything she needed to get from one level to the next.
Her performance earned Foster yet another Best Actress Academy Award.
Oh, winning the 2 Oscars is great. I mean, it's just great. It makes me laugh. Sometimes I just drive down the street and just laugh. I think it's so funny.
Despite its 5 Oscars, The Silence of the Lambs was not without its critics. Gay rights groups protested what they saw as the film's portrayal of the serial killer as a homosexual, and then called for Foster to admit she was gay, a rumor that had been around for years.
I think she's guarded her personality really well. Her personal life is off limits, and I commend her for that because I think what's important should be her work. Some actors just can't seem to split the two, but she does.
Despite the exposure that came with her 2nd Oscar win and a blockbuster smash, Jodie continued to guard her privacy. As for her career, her follow-up to The Silence of the Lambs wouldn't be in front of the camera, but behind it.
If somebody had said to me, in the early days that she would end up winning the Academy Award, I would have thought that she would have won the Academy Award as a director, not as an actress. I thought she's far too intelligent to stay being an actor.
Excuse us, please.
By her mid-20s, Jodie Foster was a superstar actress. Now she was ready to fulfill her childhood ambition to direct. For her debut, she chose a script called Little Man Tate, about a child prodigy.
She feels strongly to a certain piece of material. I think it brings out the best in her as a person who's calling the shots behind the camera and also as an actor.
I think Little Man Tate clearly was a passion production for Jodie Foster. If you're going to make a first film, do something that's an intimate story, something you're familiar with.
I looked at it immediately and said, boy, I'd really like to direct this movie. Is there any way you guys are going to let me do that? Everybody said no. I said, okay, well, all right, since you're not going to let me direct it, let me give you ideas about who could direct it. And then I sort of just worked myself into ending up being the director.
Little Man Tate tells the story of a gifted child, Fred Tate, and the 2 women who fight for his heart and mind, his mother and the dean of a school for exceptional children.
This boy, Damon Wells, can multiply 2 columns of 20-digit numbers in 5 minutes.
As a former child actor herself, Jodie knew how to take care of her young star, unknown Adam Hand Bird.
She told me, this is going to be the best experience of your life. I want to make sure that you have an amazing time. And she certainly followed through. She did an amazing job.
For Foster, a born overachiever, directing wasn't enough. She decided to also take on the role of Tate's mother, Dee Dee.
As much as Jodie is a complete professional and seems to very easily move from one headset to the other, the truth is it still is tapping into different parts of you to be an actor. Your acting head in perspective versus your directing one. And I think that that was hard. I think that that was a challenge.
In the end, the movie made the profit that Foster had promised, some $25 million for a $10 million film. Not bad for a small picture by a first-time director.
Directing is an incredibly humbling experience. And that's what's beautiful about first-time films, is that you get to see the real heart of the director, even the stuff that they totally miss.
Although Jodie could now put director on her list of credits, she remained most recognized as an actress. As other actors came and went in Flavor of the Month Hollywood, Jodie Foster, now in her early 30s, remained on the A-list.
She's very unusual in that she has this very cerebral quality, which sounds sort of off-putting, except that I think for her, intelligence as an actress is her form of sensuality, her way of drawing an audience in.
Foster was not your standard romantic leading lady. In a way, the closest she'd come to an on-screen romance was the offbeat relationship between Clarice Starling and the macabre Dr. Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs.
Certain actresses are great. They can play bubbly off of a silly romantic lead who's really got a chiseled chin and looks great on a magazine cover, but that's never really been what Jodie Foster's aspired to, and it's never been what she's been particularly good at doing.
A romantic lead ideal for Foster's strengths as an actress finally came along in 1993. She took a role opposite Richard Gere in Summersby, a remake of a French film. In this movie, Foster's character welcomes back a man claiming to be her long-lost husband.
Well, Summersby came right after I won the Oscar for Silence, and I just finished directing, and so I was in a real perfectionist mode. For Summersby, I was sort of frustrated by the experience, you know. I wanted to be better in that movie, and I really liked working with Richard Gere.
That's the first thing I remember about you. Coming back that time from wherever you'd been, looking all brown and bearded, looking more like some kind of a wild animal, man.
The first thing that was really appealing to me about Jodie Foster playing this role was that she was so unlikely a choice.
Summersby is a bit of a forgotten gem. She's very rarely played a woman in love with a man in a film before.
In small, quiet scenes, Foster and Gere build an intimate relationship between these two strangers. If seeing Jodie Foster in a romantic role seemed unusual, the idea of her in a comedy was unthinkable. And no one was more surprised when, after Summersby, she was offered a part in the comedy Maverick.
I don't know why they called me. I really don't know why they called me, because I'm not the first name that would come to your lips when you're thinking of comic actress.
The director, Richard Donner, he suggested her. I, of course, was a huge fan already. I was like, well, but it wasn't something that just jumped right out of me. And then he got back to us. She favored the idea. And I thought, well, that's cool.
Maverick was a reworking of an old television western that had starred James Garner as a personable gambler. In the film, Mel Gibson played Maverick with Garner as his father. Jodie played the con artist who confounded them both.
What?
You know, I thought, oh, this will just be fun. But, you know, I really needed to have fun. At that point in my life, I was coming out of a kind of a dark period, and boy, I really needed to laugh a lot. And so that character was important for me, personally.
Foster loved doing comedy so much, she's eager to do another, when the right material comes along. By the early 90s, Jodie Foster had achieved success on both sides of the camera. Always looking for her next challenge, she was about to embark on the next phase of her career. Ever since she got into the business, Jodie Foster was a little Miss Know-It-All and self-described control freak. In 1992, the 30-year-old finally got a chance to call all of her own shots when she opened the doors to Egg Productions.
I think Egg was also a way in which Jodie got to learn even more about the business side of the business and really more about how a lot of things work in terms of the marketplace.
Although she wanted to tackle many different genres, Jodie would come to understand the realities of her new endeavor.
Like every young person in the film business, when you open a company, you think, we're going to do everything. Eventually you realize that you should stick to what you already do, and that's your stamp, it's your signature. So that was a lesson I had to learn.
What proved to be Egg's strong point was producing smaller independent films, like the thriller Waking the Dead and The Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys, in which Foster had a role as an overbearing nun.
I won't tolerate any more disrespect from you. Now you confess. You tell us why you did this.
Actually, I heard that he branded her before
You hold your tongue, young man. You were on a terrible downward spiral.
Foster was now a major player in Hollywood, head of her own company and one of the highest paid actresses in the business, bringing in $12 million per film. on par with Julia Roberts and Sharon Stone. Where Julia was America's sweetheart and Sharon was a sex symbol, Jodie was always the smart one. However, an actress with brains and intellect wasn't always so easy to cast.
In some ways, that intelligence, that hyper-intelligence, is not what we really want most from our movie stars. So I think it makes her a very particular kind of actress. When she gets the right role, as in Silence of the Lambs, it's magic. But I think that there's more of a challenge in casting someone like her.
Jodie has never been the typical Hollywood actress, and she even has her own creative approach to finding new characters to play.
Her producing partner told us at premiere that one of the things they do when they look at a project is they pick a strong male character and they think, could this be played by a woman? It's really great because she can be powerful and smart and she's not dependent on a male for those parts.
Though she had spent nearly her entire life working in film, Foster has dedicated herself to living as normal a life as possible.
She loathes being treated like royalty. She's a very sort of egalitarian person. She just likes people to sort of treat her like another person, but of course because of her accomplishments and her talent and achievements and so on, it's hard for people to do that.
Through her company, Egg Productions, Jodie Foster hoped to produce one film a year, but good material was hard to find.
I wonder whether it was just too difficult to get stuff going, even with her name attached.
Finally, after 2 years, along came the film Nell, the story of a 30-year-old woman raised in the remote backwoods with no contact with the outside world. Egg would co-produce, and Jodie would play the lead role of Nell.
So I think for an actor that was incredibly tempting for Jodie Foster to do that role. You get to assume a character who lives in her own reality.
To tell the story of this outsider, the film crew said goodbye to civilization and set up camp in the wilds of North Carolina.
It was the most rural location I've ever been in. There was really nothing there.
It was beautiful. It was really tough. The location where we built the cabin, there was a way to drive into it, but it ended up that the quickest way to get the crew there was to boat in. So every morning the crew would be boated in to the location.
The role of Nell was certainly a risky choice. This backwoods woman speaking gibberish could so easily become embarrassing. But the possibility of looking foolish didn't bother Foster.
Try to think of any other young actress in Hollywood who would take this part, but it was really acting. You know, male actors get a lot of credit for trying things that are weird or different or risky. Women don't, and I think that's where Jodie Foster is different.
Yes, nail. Nail.
Oh, I've got it. Miss Little. Little. Arna. Big.
When the film was released, many critics found it easy to mock Jodie's portrayal of Nell. To them, her performance seemed overblown.
The film perhaps was harder for people to accept. I think you see the maneuvering of the actor behind the role. Like, I'm going to take this role because it's going to be not Oscar-worthy, but it's going to be a challenge. You know, I'm going to play this character.
I did feel like it was the kind of character that was engineered to bring attention, to win awards. So it seemed to be her self-conscious Oscar wannabe movie.
The criticism, which implied she took on the role as Oscar bait, stung the actress.
The part that really hurt me deeply was that people would say that that it was some kind of vanity, you know, that I had organized this as some kind of an Oscar vanity or a beauty vanity. I think Nell was the least vain experience I've ever had in my life, I think.
You had to applaud her courage, her commitment, her willingness to go to an edge that very, very few actors would ever go to.
4 years after her directing debut, Jodie Foster decided to go behind the cameras once again in 1995. The film Home for the Holidays explores the joy and disaster of a family's Thanksgiving weekend. Where her first film, Little Man Tate, was somewhat contained, Home for the Holidays is bursting with characters.
Well, this movie is incredibly personal. Not that it's autobiographical at all, but very, very personal. I think every one of these characters in some ways is a side of myself. The three children who come home for the holidays to be with their parents are parts of my personality, all fighting against each other. You know, the one who stayed home to take care of the parents and who doesn't get any respect for it, the one who quote-unquote leads this glamorous life, although she knows it's certainly not glamorous, and the very performative one who puts everybody at bay.
Home for the Holidays. I remember thinking this is not an easy film, even for a second time out as a director, because it's an ensemble piece. You have to make sure that everyone somehow fits into the larger scheme of things.
Her movies are kind of about flawed people who are nonetheless lovable. I mean, they're very different sort of perspectives on kind of dysfunctional or flawed or people who have liabilities in their lives that they kind of overcome by the sheer force of their genuine humanity and love of people. I mean, Jodie Foster likes people.
For many critics, Home for the Holidays was not Jodie Foster's best work. Some felt it was overly sentimental, others thought it was too predictable. Regardless of the critical barbs thrown her way, Jodie was pleased with her work.
Home for the Holidays was pretty badly reviewed in a lot of places. And strangely enough, I didn't feel that hurt because I really felt like I said what I wanted to say.
Jodie enjoyed directing a film about a family, and soon she would be producing a family of her own. After directing Home for the Holidays, Jodie Foster returned to work in front of the camera for the 1997 sci-fi hit Contact. Jodie portrayed scientist Ellie Arroway in the big-budget film, which tackled big questions.
In this film, which I thought to be very sort of adult, thought-provoking, raising questions of religion and science, she plays a hero who happens to be female, someone defined not by romance, but by a quest.
Once again, Jodie delivered the kind of stellar performance audiences had come to expect from her.
There's this moment where she's in this spaceship and we're trying to figure out if she's gonna go up there and we don't know what's gonna happen, and it's silent. And it's one of the most powerful parts of any of her movies because you can see all of her emotions go across her face in that silence.
So beautiful. I had no idea.
Contact is one of those films, I think, that isn't a perfect film by any means. There's some things that are sloppy, but nothing sloppy about her performance. She kind of throughout the film, I think, grounds it and really, identifies with the audience.
Whether as actor or director, Foster had been averaging a film or more a year throughout her career. Now she deliberately slowed down. She had 2 other projects to keep her busy. In 1997, she gave birth to her first child, a son named Charlie. 4 years later, she had another boy, Kit.
She seems to work really well with children. I think it's very easy to see her as a nurturing but very strong mother.
Having kids changed everything, and I didn't know that would happen. Both the movie business and raising children are 100% jobs, so you have to be 100% in both places. And you realize quickly that something's going to suffer, you're going to be bad at something.
What Foster has been very good at is keeping herself and her children out of the spotlight. She has not publicly identified the father of her children, and any information regarding her love life remained impossible to come by.
It's because she's, kept that part of her life away from us. We can really see her for what she is, and which is a great actress.
In 2001, Foster decided she could no longer run both a company and a family. She chose to close Egg Productions.
I'm very proud of the movies we made. I'm just really proud of the films that I was associated with. At the same time, it took so much out of me that I was ready for it all to come to a close.
She directs, she acts, she was trying to produce things. Something had to go.
Jodie was beginning to realize that Hollywood can be a tough place for an actress in her 40s.
It is a dramatic difference being over 40 now, and there's a lot less scripts. Most stories are for people that are in their 30s or in their late 20s, so it's normal that it's getting less scripts out there.
She was also becoming even more selective about her roles, now that work meant missing out on time with her family.
It has to be, I don't know, phenomenal, but it has to mean something to me, and it has to be worth it because, it means you leave them.
In 2002, innovative young director David Fincher asked Foster to take Nicole Kidman's place in his film Panic Room. Kidman had dropped out because of an injury. In the film, Foster must save herself and her daughter when burglars break into their home.
Where you going? Huh?
I think she was perfect for it. I mean, physically, I think she's perfect for it because she's small. Like, she couldn't fight 3 armed attackers, but she can.
What's going on? People in the house.
I think that it shows her nurturing side, too. Obviously, it was all about protecting her daughter.
She's so feisty that when her character is pushed, there's always that sense of, wow, that little broad is gonna do it.
3 years later, Foster would again play a mother with a daughter in peril in the Hitchcock-like thriller Flight Plan.
Did you happen to see a little girl go by here? No.
I'm looking for my daughter. Flight Plan is about a woman who's recently a widow, who's traveling with her small daughter back to America and bringing the body of her husband back to America. And very soon after the flight takes off, she goes to sleep, wakes up, and her daughter's gone. It's disappeared. And she goes through hell to try and find her.
I'm sorry, but I don't think that she's here. What? Ma'am, we don't have any record of your daughter ever having been on board.
Her appearance in the film was another example of Jodie's ability to be defined not by her gender, but her talent.
The script of Flight Plan initially was written for a man. We heard that Jodie was interested in the project. She read it and liked it, and then we'd have changed the gender.
I just was really moved by the story, by the character of this woman who goes through so much in such a short period of time.
Flight Plan obviously showed her growth into motherhood. The fear and the panic, it's very tangible.
Jodie Foster is her own woman. Doesn't conform to any of the categories that, as far as I can tell, exist these days for female stars.
Jodie was now working sporadically in films. Unlike earlier in her career, she was now enjoying working at her own pace.
I mean, I still want to direct films, and I'm involved with that. But I remember when I was a kid and I did 4 movies a year, and that's just not something I'm ever going to do again. Maybe when I'm in my 80s.
I think when you see the name Jodie Foster, you automatically think quality. And that's not to say that she hasn't made films that are less than stellar. Obviously, she has. But generally, she's a really smart actress who makes really smart choices.
She does not choose only leading roles in big Hollywood films. She really mixes it up. She has often chosen secondary roles.
In 2006, she worked for the first time with director Spike Lee on the film Inside Man. Though Denzel Washington received top billing, Jodie made good use of her screen time in the suspenseful thriller.
It is different because it's a very mainstream, kind of commercial, plot-driven film. Lots of twists and turns, unlike anything that he usually does, but I think is so true and so delicate and interesting.
I really found that Spike Lee film to be a very taut, effective thriller. And although she certainly is not the star of the film, her interactions with another great actor, Christopher Plummer, beautiful to watch.
In 2007, Jodie starred in The Brave One, about a woman who sets out to avenge the murder of her fiancé. It was another chance to play a complex female character.
Typically in Hollywood, diminutive females do not get the roles of smart action heroines. I think this is very much her domain. Foster understands and is drawn to the theme of demystification, the sense that women need to be appreciated as both fallible or vulnerable and heroic.
Later that year, Jodie received the Sherry Lansing Leadership Award. Upon accepting the honor, she reflected proudly on her impressive body of work.
What's nice about it is that it's not just about the movie I did last week or something that I did this year. It's sort of looking back on a career and saying, you know, what kind of meaning did you bring to it?
During her emotional acceptance speech, Jodie also spoke publicly about her love life for the first time. Jodie put an end to years of speculation when she acknowledged her then partner, Sidney Bernard. In 2008, she appeared in Nim's Island, a comedy adventure based on a popular children's novel. While making the film, the former child star got a chance to work alongside rising star Abigail Breslin.
Because I started when I was 3 years old, we've lived kind of very similar lifestyles. You know, you have a real task, and you have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you know, there are things that you have to learn your lines, and there are things that you have to accomplish, and yet within that there's such spontaneity and fun. You know, the combination of those two, I think those are things that we've really shared together.
In 2009, Jodie returned to directing for the first time in 4 years with a most unusual film. She teamed up once again with her maverick co-star, Mel Gibson, in the offbeat comedy, The Beaver. The story of the film revolved around a man and his beaver hand puppet.
If you look at her whole body of work, it's pretty eclectic. But generally, I guess I would say that she likes some tough subject matter.
In 2010, Foster continued to work on developing a film about Nazi director and actress Leni Riefenstahl.
I know that at one point she was very interested in doing a Leni Riefenstahl project. In other words, one strong female who became a filmmaker taking on another strong female who became a filmmaker.
Although it will surely be controversial due to Riefenstahl's complex history, Jodie Foster has never been intimidated by difficult material. And while the priorities in her life may have changed, she still remains dedicated to working on interesting projects.
She could have left the career a long time ago. She had her awards early on, 2 Oscars before she turned 30, and didn't go on to just make big blockbusters. She's kind of followed her passions and really does seem to enjoy the acting.
I'd like to see Jodie Foster get back in the game a bit more. I'd like to see her come up with another strong female character in a really solid film.
It's way too early to tell what Jodie Foster's legacy will be. I consider her already truly inspirational to other young women who are planning to become actors and or directors.
I made so many movies when I was young that I think you get a lot of stuff out of your system and that you don't need to repeat again. And then you really start making movies for the right reasons. You make them because they move you and they challenge you, and you can't help but make that film. It has to be something that is a larger-than-life goal for me.